Yeah, you developed you spoke of developing an infrastructure committee and you identified Cove Sewer and Dorman Road, which is basically Sewer Cove Road, as possible things. But I'm just wondering if you thought about the makeup of that committee, because that would be an advisory committee that probably prioritizes these capital planning projects fairly specifically for you. So I'm wondering, who will be on that infrastructure committee and how far they will have.
Okay, well, two ways to answer that question. First of all, actually for me to put Cove Sewer and Dorman Road failure up there, it's probably jumping way down the process. Yeah. I mean, that was, so actually just take those off. And my strong hunch is those are going to show up, but that's not agreed to through the review of an infrastructure committee, nor has it come back to council and basically got sanctioned. So anyways, let's pull those two off the list. That said, we have a closed meeting on Monday, which will basically look at the composition and nominations for such an infrastructure committee, and then we will have a part of the public meeting that follows that on Monday night that will also talk about the infrastructure committee. But we're very intent on creating this quickly and getting it up and running quickly. We already know that there are infrastructure deadlines in some of the grants or the funding programs that are as early as April. Yeah. So time is of the essence. Yeah. So anyways, so I can't really say much more, but council will be right on top of this on Monday, and we'll be walking out the door at the end of the meeting on Monday with some public statements that are clarified. Judy?
My name is Judy Bolko, and I just wanted to comment on the OCP, the current proposed and development, and the fact that, from my opinion, my point of view, and I believe a lot of people that I know on this island, no development should drive the OCP. It always has to be the other way around. And having worked on the current OCP, there's an enormous amount of time that you put into it. And there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of process that goes through where people don't agree, they agree, but we always come to a consensus and will in the future. And you have to be very clear on what drives what if you want to have people volunteering their precious time for the future. Because I'm certainly not going to get involved in the future one if any development is driving it. So I think that should be very clear to council, that it has to be the other way around.
No, it's a visionary document. It captures sort of the intentions of the community. John?
I wanted to ask again about the timeline for the Cove Sewer line.
What is it?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I don't think we have a timeline for it. Does anybody want to speak to that? I mean, there's some steps on the way.
Yeah, like everybody said that it's a priority during the election campaign.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how that's,
Nothing's changed on that. I mean, from a strategic plan, it's being identified as one of 4 priorities. And these are sort of informal conversations so far, but whenever we talk about Cove Sewer, it rises right to the top. Mm-hmm. We realize, just how critical it is for other key projects. Yeah. So I just can't imagine it's going to fall off the list. And we're not going to the infrastructure committee is going to be working really hard to develop a proposal for that in the shortest time possible.
Do you see something starting saying a year or 4 years or?
Allison?
Well, we've started, there's 2 parts to the Cove Sewer. One is expanding the treatment plant.
Yes.
And there's 2 sets of engineering studies working on that now as to how that would work and how we could use the treated effluent more other than just dumping it out of the landfill. And then the other side is where do the lines go, how far do you expand the sewer district, and where those lines are servicing and where they're going to run. And I think that's the second part of what we're talking about in Cove Sewer. And the meeting with John Westman, he was giving us information on the types of projects that might apply, and then looking at the Building Canada Fund information that just popped up on the website Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock, that it's shovel-ready type projects and things like that. So that's partly why I think Cove Sewer and Dorman Road got looked at maybe as things that could be ready with capacity. But
Yeah. When could you see a sewer, say, reaching the Anfield area?
Well, that's all what I think this infrastructure group would look at. I mean, how long does it take to do it, what kind of costing, all that sort of stuff would be done.
I guess what we're saying, we don't know the details of how fast. Only, I think what we're generally saying is that we're going to move as fast as possible now. I mean, it
Could be years, though.
well, it's going to be, yeah, in the more than a year. I can't imagine us getting this thing done in less than a year. I mean, there's some steps along the way that are time consuming. Yeah.
Thanks.
Doug and Peter?
Just a question to clarify. When people talk about central connection, sewage connection, it means different things to different people. So, Happyfield, getting at least that far is clearly something that services that seniors housing and affordable housing components that go with it, as well as possibly community lands on the east side of the road. But there's also discussions about hooking up Stunt Cove, Stunt Point, also discussions about extending all the way out to the deep bay in the future. And there's also some pending development from Woodgate Johnson, something that's called artisan settlement, artisan something. So when you're asking the question, what are you referring to?
Well, let's say, when do you think sewer might get to Bowen Court and be available for Abbeyfield and the lands there, that far?
And so, yeah, the answer is establishing what the priorities are in this sewage connection discussion is step one, and then getting to work on it. But I think that particular line is what most of the conversation gets.
Yeah.
There is a bigger conversation that we've got to be careful of our definition.
I understand, yes. I'm just sort of using that as kind of an idea, but
And the timelines, along the lines of building Canada Fund and the shovel-ready project, my sense is, and I missed the Western meeting, but if we hustle now, we can have work next year.
okay,
That
thanks.
includes, but I'm not the engineer.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Peter?
I've captured most of what I was going to say. I've been liaison to sewer committee, which hasn't been meeting very frequently, but when we talked about the complexity of the project, it's low complexity, it's not difficult engineering. The actual biggest hurdles are really what kind of ground you're going through. So the design of it is the most important part, to figure out the best and most efficient distribution or collection system around it. And where you run these things, whether you've got lift stations and all that kind of stuff, or whether you run it down to the bottom and have the one where the center town pump everything back up. But the actual putting pipes in the ground is not a big deal. It's something you do in weeks or months. And the sewer expansion itself was viewed to be about an 18-month project, of which 6 months was planning and design. And so that could be easily finished by this time next year.
Thanks.
Okay, Marion and James, did I jump? Miss anybody that was already? Marion and then James?
Yeah, I'm just again on sewer. As you probably recall, many years ago, the community was horrified at the thought of ocean alcohol sewage. And the system was not allowed to expand until a certain treatment was put in place. And I was wondering what level of treatment we are aspiring to here. With our lofty statements, we will protect the natural environment first and foremost here.
So, just as a history, we made a proposal to expand the sewer treatment plant. I think pretty much with sort of the technology that we're using today, ocean outfall. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the BC government sent it back to us and said, not green enough. We're not interested in that type of project. So we basically redid it. This was when Brad Hawthorne was involved, and greened it up. And one of the key strategies was essentially creating enough clean enough that it could be put into Davies Creek. And the interest of that was that Davies Creek is has a low flow